On January 17, 1994, a disgruntled ex-employee entered the Leathers Oil gas station in Gresham, Oregon. When he left $9,000 richer, in his wake, a horrific scene. 3 bodies waiting to be discovered.
Discretion is advised. This is 10-Minute Murder.
Welcome to 10-Minute Murder, brief and bingeable true crime. My name is Joe. Hi, I'm the host, and I appreciate you joining today. I'm also pretty excited because this is the first episode in a couple of weeks where my voice doesn't sound like it needs lotion. If you're a new listener to 10-Minute Murder, I'm thrilled that you found it, and I hope that you enjoy what you hear. If you do, wherever you're listening right now, find the place to subscribe, and do that. And if you're a returning OG listener, what's up? I'm glad you made it back, and when you get the chance, send this podcast to 5 of your friends by midnight tonight. Did Joe just hit us with a chain letter? No, I wouldn't do that, because a chain letter would have ended with, or else these consequences will happen. And I didn't do that because I'm very chalantly trying to avoid any and all court subpoenas. And as a general rule, I just overall avoid the word subpoenas, because if you say it too fast, it sounds like penis, and then people get confused. Hey, by the way, also connect with 10-Minute Murder on social media. Links in the episode notes. Now to today's story. The morning started out as usual on Monday, January 17th, 1994, for the employees of Leathers Oil Company gas station in Gresham, Oregon. It was 6:40 a.m. and the station had just opened for the day. Mary Beth Wheeler was working alongside her mother-in-law, Rosalie Faye Gertz, and another woman, Virginia K. Edencott. The women had all worked at the store for some time and were pretty popular with the regulars. It was early, and the trio was going about their usual duties as normal, until a masked man entered the store, a masked man who would later be revealed as Tyrone Theus. If you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you probably think, well, Joe has messed up someone else's name. But I haven't. It's Tyrone, T-Y-R-O-M. And Tyrone knew the women. Having worked at the gas station for a couple of months before, he'd even been on shift with these same women at times. Described by other workers as helpful, polite, and never one to miss or be late for a shift, Tyrone, just 20 years old, had recently left the store after a period of suspension. It was speculated that during this time, Tyrone had fallen in with the wrong crowd and had started doing drugs. He was caught stealing $30 by Harry Staten, a supervisor at the gas station, and was immediately suspended pending a further internal investigation. Tyrone apologized for the theft and gave the money back. It was likely due to it being such a small amount that he was only suspended and not outright fired. However, maybe due to embarrassment, shame, or we'll never know why, but Tyrone told the company he would not be returning after suspension and needed a change of scenery, despite not having another job lined up. Maybe the mounting debt and the humiliation had become too much for Tyrone, because just days after he quit his job at the Leathers Oil gas station, he came back with a vengeance. The 3 women had sensed something wasn't quite right when they realized there was a car outside running, with nobody getting out to refuel. They struggled to see who was inside due to the bright lights shining in. Tyrone then entered the store, masked and armed, and immediately ordered the women to empty their tills and hand over the $9,000 in cash. Terrified, they complied. The station didn't typically leave that amount of money available, but Mondays were different. Monday was the day that they would deposit all the money they'd made over the weekend, and Tyrone knew this. This was his plan. He staked out the store to ensure that nobody working could overpower him. He waited and watched from a distance for his chance to enter, and this day he left with more than $30. During the robbery, his mask slipped, and Virginia realized who he was, and she made the fateful mistake of letting him know that she knew. After he bagged the stolen money, he realized he couldn't just leave. Not yet. He would easily be identified and caught, and that couldn't happen. He herded the women away from the front floor into a storage room and ordered them to lie face down on the floor. There was nothing they could do. Tyrone Theus shot all 3 women execution style where they lay. They died instantly. Tyrone ran. The getaway car outside drove around so he could quickly exit with the money and get away from the scene. Tyrone's cousin, Larry Sheriff, and Tyrone's girlfriend also sat inside, a woman named Lori Stevens. Lori was married at the time to another man, but it's speculated that at the time of the robbery, she was sleeping with both Larry and Tyrone, with neither of them knowing about the other. However, it's not known whether Tyrone immediately disclosed the murders, which weren't part of the original plan. Nevertheless, they drove away, reveling in their new $9,000 fortune. Just 9 minutes after the attack, unsuspecting customers came across the gruesome scene. After filling up, a man and a woman had pulled up to the respective vehicles and discovered, quote, the lights were on but nobody was home. They went into the station to pay for the gas and saw nobody in the store. Looking around, everything was set up for the day but couldn't understand why nobody was attending to them. They walked into the back thinking maybe someone was on break, and that's when they saw the bodies. They found Mary Beth Wheeler, who was just 25 years old, Rosalie Faye Gertz, 51, and Virginia K. Edencott, 47. It was a gruesome scene. A juror on the case later described the crime scene photos as the stuff of nightmares and an image you cannot forget. Of course, one of the customers immediately dialed 911 and stayed on the phone until the emergency services arrived. They were advised by dispatchers to check the pulses of the victims, but found no signs of life. The police launched an investigation, going door to door with their inquiries, with residents living locally to the gas station asking if they had seen or heard anything around the time of the attack. But no leads came from this. Nothing had been off that morning, and the residents had begun their days as normal. It wasn't until Lori Stevens broke down to her husband, David Chrisman, when they were talking about the gruesome attack that the truth came out. Lori admitted that she had been at the gas station that morning, having driven both Tyrone and Larry there. She denied any knowledge of what the plan was and stoutly claimed her innocence, stating that she was merely doing a favor for a friend when she drove the two there. Two friends she was sleeping with. David, believing his wife was just someone who had a bad choice of friends and was, quote, in the wrong place at the wrong time, initially believed her story hook, line, and sinker. Angry that Larry and Tyrone had implicated his wife in the murders, he called them. Unknowingly, this call would trigger one of the longest manhunts America has seen. After receiving the call, knowing David was minutes away from calling the police and revealing the crime, Tyrone knew he had to run. On the 10th of February, 1994, just 24 days after the triple homicide, Tyrone Theus was seen for the last time. Both Lori Stevens and Larry Sheriff were arrested and admitted their parts that they played in the attack. They were both sentenced and served 10 years in prison. They are now out, living new lives, probably under new identities, and have never spoken to the media about the case or the part they played in the murders. But Tyrone, he remains on the run to this day. America's Most Wanted featured the case as part of their Fugitive Hotline segment, just under a year after he fled on January 13, 1995. And investigators have released age-progressed images over the years of what they believe Tyrone would look like now if he's still out there. But is he? Speculation within the town and online points to a few different theories as to what happened to Tyrone Theus after he fled. People believe that he could not have survived this long and has long since died somewhere in the wilderness, with those claiming to have known him believing his body could have been found in Mount Hood National Park, some 50 miles away from where he fled. It is speculated by Tyrone's father that his son was probably drinking at a bar near Mount Hood, bragging about the crime and the fact that he'd gotten away until he left the bar and was followed by some men out to serve their own form of justice. His father believes that Tyrone met his maker shortly after leaving the bar and was murdered. That's a very specific theory. Others cite the $9,000 he stole and theorize that he was able to flee the country and is possibly living in Mexico, unsuspecting with the new identity. Another theory is that Tyrone simply killed himself after finding out he was about to be arrested, knowing he would face the death penalty. He would rather take his own life and avoid a lengthy trial and years on death row. But those who knew Tyrone refused to believe that he had any part in the attack. When researching this case, it was clear to me that the homicides at Leather's Oil Company are something that, to this day, still divides the town, with half believing his absence speaking for his guilt, and the other half believing that he was framed and set up by his cousin to take the fall for the murders, while he got off with a 10-year sentence. Those that think Tyrone was framed point to the fact that no body or trace of him has ever been found. alluding to the belief that Larry murdered his cousin before the police could even get to him. And again, that's just a town theory. The Leathers oil station has long since been demolished, and a new garage, operated by Shell, was constructed just yards away from where it once stood. While there is little hope of any resolution to this case, the fact remains that Tyrone Theus, if alive, still remains at large to this day, 28 years after the homicides. That's today's 10-Minute Murder, brief and bingeable true crime. Thank you for checking out the show today. If this was your first episode, I hope that you enjoyed it and you stick around to hear some more. Subscribe wherever you are listening right now, and you will never miss another episode. Connect with 10-Minute Murder on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, all the places. The links are in the show notes of this episode. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I'm not going to hit you with a chain letter. This isn't 1997. If it was 1997, you'd be chain lettered so hard, but it's not. So send this podcast to any of your friends that you think may be into brief true crime stories like this, and I will appreciate it more than you know. Thank you for listening to 10-Minute Murder. Be safe and make good choices.